What's going on, everybody? We're doing a Q&A video today. I think you're really going to enjoy it because we have some awesome questions. I'm going to talk about a major mistake that I made backpacking. I'm going to talk about some of the creepy people I've met on trail. And make sure you watch all the way until the end because the last question I'm going to answer has to do with my personal theories about what happened to the 3 missing hikers on the Pacific Crest Trail. Real quick before we start the video, I just want to say that if you guys want even more backpacking and thru hiking content, please check out my podcast, Trail Tales. You can find it on any podcast app, or you can actually go subscribe to the new Trail Tales YouTube channel, where you can find every single episode and every future episode as well. Right now, it's audio only over there, but I do want to start making video podcasts, and that's why I started the YouTube channel. So go subscribe to the Trail Tales YouTube channel. Let's get into the questions. What was the first hike you made a major mistake during, and how did you recover to continue? I've made a lot of backpacking mistakes over the years, and obviously when you're younger and when you're less experienced, you're gonna make more. The first hike that I made a major mistake on was actually my very first backpacking trip. It was when I was 16 years old, and I was trying to thru hike the Vermont Long Trail, but I had no business being out there. And so just the fact that I tried to do that was a mistake in and of itself, but that wasn't really like a dangerous mistake. A few years later, I think it was 2015, I took my girlfriend at the time out on a backpacking trip. And she had like a decent amount of hiking experience, but I don't think she had ever backpacked before. She definitely wasn't as experienced as I was, and even I wasn't that experienced back then. We were trying to hike Owl's Head, which is a 4,000 footer in the White Mountains. It's pretty remote. It's a pretty difficult hike. And as we were coming back down the mountain, a thunderstorm rolled in, and it was a classic White Mountains summer, just nasty, super scary, super dangerous thunderstorm. Fortunately, at this point, we were not in an exposed area. We were well below tree line. Rather than doing what I should have done, which was being like, hey, we're gonna stop here, we're gonna set up our tent, and we're just gonna ride this out. We're in a safe area, there's camp spots nearby, and there's water nearby for us to drink. Like, we should just stop here. Instead of doing that, I was like, let's just try to out-hike this thunderstorm, which is stupid. Don't try to do that. It doesn't work. It's one thing if there's bad weather approaching and you want to quickly hike to a safer area, but that's not what I was trying to do here. I was just trying to out-hike the thunderstorm, which is just impossible. What ended up happening was we just booked it down the trail, and the real dangerous part came in because there was a couple river crossings. It's absolutely downpouring, and so these already somewhat difficult river crossings are getting even more difficult because there's more water, they're moving fast, and so we're rushing through these river crossings. Neither one of us, but especially her, she did not have the experience to be doing that, and I didn't either at the time. Have you ever been close to calling for rescue for yourself? That's a somewhat related and very good question. There seems to be a little bit of a... So in recent times, there's been a couple different hiking YouTubers who needed to call for rescue while they were on the trail. I'm sure a lot of you know about Dan Becker's experience in the Grand Canyon last year. And then, of course, more recently, Homemade Wanderlust, aka Dixie, had to hit the SOS button on her Garmin while she was hiking in Idaho, I believe. Both of them ended up being okay, and I'm very, very happy about that. But the fact that it happened to 2 pretty prominent YouTubers, it's a little bit interesting. I've never even really been close. I've never really had a moment where I was like fearful for my life, other than like something that just happened so quick and then was over, like that boulder that almost hit me on the PCT last year.
Pretty close. Oh my God.
And so I feel very grateful. Everything's been good, but you do this stuff enough, you backpack enough, you spend enough time in the backcountry. I don't know if it's only a matter of time, but your odds are certainly going to be very high for it happening compared to someone who only hikes a couple times a year. What was your weirdest / creepiest experience while hiking? Oh man, that's a good one. I've definitely met some weird people. I've never had like a paranormal or Bigfoot kind of thing. On my Appalachian Trail thru hike, there was a couple times where I saw like homeless people that were living in the shelters, or maybe not living, but they were just staying in the shelters. Like, they weren't normal hikers. And to be fair, I guess that's not really like super creepy because they were all fine. They were harmless, but it's just a little unnerving, I guess, when you see someone who's kind of just like drifting along the trail and not actually hiking it. I did have a pretty creepy encounter with an old lady that was probably on some sort of drugs when I hiked the Foothills Trail with my friend Flossie. I have a whole video about that story, but just to recap, she had a dog in her car and she was like telling us the dog was gonna attack us. She was clearly on drugs of some sort. It was weird. There was one time a guy picked me up when I was hitchhiking back to the trail, so I wasn't actually on the trail, and he was very like angry and like pent up, rambling about his ex-wife and using some very, very politically incorrect, to put it mildly, language, some really nasty words. It was fine. He dropped me off and I went on my way, but I don't know, just like, I felt like if I had said the wrong thing, it would have been a situation, but I don't know. And then I also had a drunk driver pick me up one time hiking the Vermont Long Trail, beer cans on the floor of the car, driving erratically. Texas plates in Vermont. That should have been the first red flag.
Take me to Texas.
What was your favorite part of the Appalachian Trail location-wise? Great question. I can't pick one. A couple that come to mind are the Grayson Highlands are a classic. The Rowan Highlands down south were really, really cool. I really liked Shenandoah National Park. And of course, the White Mountains, my favorite place in the world. I love New Hampshire. It feels like home up there. By the way, guys, leave a comment and let me know where you're from. I'm a huge geography nerd, and so I just like to hear about where people that like my content are from. So comment your hometown. What factors influence the timing of your PCT reattempt, aka trying again in August versus a less fire-prone month? Fair question. Last year I tried to hike the PCT. I did most of it, but there was a couple sections that were closed because of fires. And then this year I went back to try to fill in those sections that I missed last year, and once again, a number of them closed because of fires. And a lot of people were commenting, Kyle, you're an idiot for going back in August. You should have gone back earlier in the season and the chance of fires would have been a lot less. Fair point, dude. You're 100% right. The reason I didn't was because I was living in the White Mountains of New Hampshire for the spring and the summer. I really love it there. And so I just wanted to have as much time there as I could. In hindsight, obviously, I would have gone back earlier than I did. How often do you meet annoying people on trails, and how do you deal with unwanted hiking buddies? I mean, like anything in life, like you're going to meet some annoying people sometimes, but there's far less annoying people on trail than off trail, I'll say that. Unwanted hiking buddies, I feel like I've never had somebody just like follow me, or I've never had to deal with that, but maybe it will eventually. We'll see. I'll probably just start farting a lot. We'll see if that works. Which long distance trail was harder for you, PCT or AT, and why? Great question. I've been wanting to make a whole video about this actually. There's not really one clear winner when it comes to which trail was harder, because each trail is harder in different ways. The Appalachian Trail physically was probably tougher. I mean, that's what a lot of people say, but honestly, there were some pretty physically tough parts of the PCT as well. You have to deal with elevation, which you don't have to deal with on the AT. You have to deal with long food carries that weigh on your body because your backpack's so much heavier. I feel like a lot of that stuff kind of evens it out. Physically, it's kind of a toss-up. Logistically, the PCT was way harder. On the AT, logistics, resupply, town stops, super easy, super straightforward. On the PCT, it's usually straightforward, but there are a few sections where it's not. Going through the Sierras on the PCT in the southern Sierras, dude, we had to hike 7.5 miles off trail just to get to a trailhead which had no service, and then we had to try to get a ride into town from that trailhead. Super convoluted. On the AT, there's nothing like that. Mentally, the PCT was harder for sure. Any through hike's gonna be hard mentally, but on the PCT, just dealing with the fires, some of the hardships that Flossie was going through, burn zones in the heat, the fact that I didn't actually finish. Overall, I think the PCT was probably harder. For me. The Fry Family Hikes asked a great question. What do you think happened to the 3 missing PCT hikers? I recently read this book called Trail of the Lost by Andrea Lankford. This book goes over the cases of the 3 missing PCT hikers. That's David O'Sullivan, Chris Sylvia, and Chris Fowler. All of whom I've done videos on, separate videos, by the way. I just finished this book, and I just interviewed Andrea on Trail Tales, so once again, another reason to go over to the YouTube channel, which I will have a link to in the description, and to subscribe to that channel. Before I say what I think happened in these 3 cases, I just want to give a disclaimer. Just because I make videos about this stuff does not mean that I'm like an expert on search and rescue or missing persons or anything like that. I'm just a storyteller at the end of the day. And most of you understand that, but just to be clear, my opinion on these cases is no more important than anyone else's. In fact, it's maybe even less important. I usually don't try to interject my opinion, but since you asked, here's what I think happened. I think the most likely thing that happened to Chris Fowler is just the most obvious thing, which is he hiked out into a very remote area late in the season and right before a snowstorm. He probably just got lost or turned around, snowbound, something. He got off trail by accident and succumbed to the elements. Of course, there's always a chance of something else happening, but based on the story that as I know it, I think that's probably the most likely thing. If that is what happened, I think the chances of his body and his gear being found someday soon, are very high. David O'Sullivan, I think a very similar thing happened. So you'll remember with his case, he hiked into the San Jacinto Mountains pretty early in the season when there were still some pretty dangerous snow conditions on the PCT. He was also not very experienced or experienced at all in these conditions. He probably didn't have the best gear for it sounds like. And so just like Chris Fowler, I think the most obvious thing is probably what happened here. He got off trail, maybe he fell, maybe he slipped. He was hiking in an area that's had multiple fatalities, by the way, in very similar conditions. Just like Chris, I think his body is probably still out there somewhere. I don't think there was any foul play involved with either one of them, and I think that they will be recovered and we will get some more answers eventually. And then the last missing PCT hiker is Chris Sylvia, and his case is a lot more tricky. I honestly don't really know. Unlike the first two cases, there wasn't any bad weather. He kind of just vanished. Actually, in reading this book right here, Trail of the Lost, which I will also have a link to in the description if you guys want to go buy it, because I think it's well worth reading. In this book, Andrea talks about some additional information and clues in that case that I did not cover in my video. I honestly didn't know about them at the time. And so his gear was found just laid out across the trail with no sign of him. It's very bizarre. I don't know, dude. There's the theory that maybe 12 tribes recruited him and then he ran off with them to start a new life. There's always the foul play theory. It could have been an animal. There's mountain lions in the area. I don't think he succumbed to the elements. I'll just say that. It's a tricky one. Unfortunately, my opinion is that it's going to be harder to get answers for this one. But then again, my opinion doesn't mean anything about this. I just tell the stories. Thank you all for your questions. Thank you for watching. And if you haven't subscribed to this channel, you're definitely going to want to do it now, because this next month is going to be just banger after banger. I've got some really awesome videos coming out, some scary, some sad, some fun stuff. It's going to be awesome. You don't want to miss it. So hit that subscribe button and let's get this channel to 300,000. Thank you all very, very much.